حاصل کر سکتے ہیں. آپ کی فیلڈ کس میں ہے جس میں آپ نے ڈاکٹریٹ کیا ہے؟
ڈاکٹر صاحب بس میں کرنے والا ہوں 3 months میں کر رہا ہوں مارکیٹنگ میں.
مارکیٹنگ میں؟
جی ڈاکٹر صاحب.
پوسٹ ڈاک یہاں پہ تو ایسے اویلیبل نہیں ہے, وہ تو فوراً سے ہی ہوگی. اور مارکیٹنگ کے ہمارے پاس جو اسپیشلائز فیکلٹی ممبرز ہیں, آئی ڈونٹ تھنک سو ابھی کسی نے جوائن کیا. جیسے کوئی جوائن کرتے ہیں, اگر ان کے نالج میں کوئی ایسی پوسٹ ڈاک ہوئی جو اویلیبل ہے باہر, تو ڈیفینیٹلی لیٹ یو نو. آپ کا ای میل آ گیا ہے تو اس ای میل پہ آپ کو رابطہ کر لیں گے. لیکن فار دا ٹائم بینگ پوسٹ ڈاک مارکیٹنگ میں ایز سچ فی الحال نیشن وائڈ تو اویلیبل نہیں ہے. انٹرنیشنل ملٹیپل اپرچونیٹیز آتی ہیں, وہ جو مارکیٹنگ ایکسپرٹ ہیں وہ آپ کو بہتر بتا سکتے ہیں.
نہیں ڈاکٹر صاحب وہ آپ سے کہہ رہے ہیں, میں پاکستان کو تو پوچھ ہی نہیں رہا. پاکستان میں تو آپ دعا کریں کہ وہ MS اور PhD چل پڑے تو بہت بڑی بات ہے. پوسٹ ڈاک تو بہت بات کی باتیں ہیں.
یہ ہمارے کچھ اسپلٹ پروگرام چلتے ہیں, کچھ یونیورسٹیز کرواتی ہیں اسپلٹ پروگرام جو پاکستان میں آفر ہوتے ہیں.
جی ڈاکٹر صاحب وہ میں اس لیے پوچھ رہا ہوں نا, وہ تو بہت ہی کوئی لکی ہوگا نا کہ جس کو HEC کا کوئی اپرچونیٹی میں جو اسپلٹ پروگرام ہے. میں ان کی بات کر رہا ہوں جو آؤٹ سائڈر ہے, مطلب جو اس لوپ میں ابھی نہیں ہے نا, یا انہوں نے ابھی پاکستان میں جوائننگ نہیں دی ہے. تو پوسٹ ڈاک جنہوں نے کی ہوتے ہیں ان کو پتہ ہوتا ہے روٹس کا نا. جیسے امریکہ میں بہت اویلیبل ہے, آسٹریلیا میں, کینیڈا میں, نیوزی لینڈ میں, یورپین کنٹریز میں اویلیبلٹی ہوتی ہے. لیکن چونکہ ہمارے لیے ایک نیا وہ ہے نا ایکسپیرینس, ہمیں اتنا اس کا پتہ نہیں ہے کہ کہاں پہ اپلائی کریں, کون سے فورم میں, کہاں کہاں اس کی لنکیجز ہیں. بٹ ان اینی وے I'll try to find out.
ظفر بھائی پارٹیسپینٹس کی کیا اسٹرینتھ ہے ابھی, کتنی تعداد ہو چکی ہے ہمارے پاس؟
سر 15 لوگ ہو چکے ہیں.
کتنے؟
15.
السلام علیکم.
السلام علیکم ڈاکٹر صاحب.
وعلیکم السلام سر.
کیا حال ہے سر؟ ٹھیک ٹھاک ہے, خیریت سے آپ لوگ؟
جی اللہ کا شکر. آپ سنائیں سر, خیریت سے؟
جی الحمدللہ سر, شکر ہے آپ سب کی. ماشاءاللہ فیملیز بھی ساری ٹھیک ہے الحمدللہ.
الحمدللہ سر,
شکر اللہ پاک کا.
آج کل سنا ہے بہت زیادہ کام زیادہ پھیلا ہوا ہے, بلکہ ابھی ایک اور ذرائع سے پتہ چلا, وہ کہتے ہیں کہ سینٹرل ہاسپٹل میں پارکنگ کے اندر بھی انہوں نے بیڈز لگائے ہوئے ہیں.
یہ اب وہ وقت آ رہا ہے جب وہ خدا سے وہ کہتے تھے نا ڈاکٹرز کے ہسپتالوں پہ بھی ہمیں سڑکوں پہ کرنا پڑے گا, ٹریٹمنٹ کرنا پڑے گا. اللہ نہ کرے وہ وقت آئے, لیکن چیزیں اس طرف جا رہی ہیں.
جی بالکل ایسے ہی.
وہ مطلب مختلف ہاسپٹل سے یہ رپورٹ آ رہی ہے, گورنمنٹ تو نہیں مانتی, لیکن جو پرائیویٹ ذرائع ہیں اور جو چینلز والے میڈیا وہ بتاتا ہے کہ اب بیڈ وینٹیلیٹرز ختم ہوتے جا رہے ہیں, ہاسپٹلز میں جگہ ختم ہوتی جا رہی ہے. تو آپ پیشنٹ کو لے کے, اس دن مصدق ملک کہہ رہا تھا ٹی وی پہ کہ ہم نے کتنے گھنٹے کتنے سارے سورسز استعمال کیے, اس کے بعد جا کے پھر ہمیں ایک بیڈ ملا.
بس اسی لیے بس احتیاط ہی اس ٹائم زیادہ بہتر چیز ہے کہ احتیاط کی جائے.
یہ بالکل صحیح بات ہے.
ڈاکٹر صاحب ایک میرے ذہن میں ایک وہ تھی, ایک تجویز سی تھی, ایک آئیڈیا سا تھا, میں نے کہا آپ لوگوں سے شیئر کریں اس کا فائدہ اٹھا کے.
جی آپ بات کر سکتے ہیں.
تھینک یو ڈاکٹر صاحب. ڈاکٹر صاحب ہمارے ملیشیا میں تو یہ کافی کچھ عرصے سے یہ کام سٹارٹ ہو گیا. یہاں پہ کیا ہوتا ہے, آپ واٹس ایپس میں گروپس بنا لیتے ہیں, اور پھر جو لائک مائنڈیڈ ہوتے ہیں نا, جو کوئی جوائنٹ وینچر یا کسی پروجیکٹ میں یا کسی پیپر پہ کام کرنا چاہیں, جیسے کراس ملٹی ڈسپلنریز ہوتے ہیں, تو اس میں اگر ہم اس کو کوئی گروپ بنا لیں, کیونکہ زیادہ تر جو اچھے آرٹیکلس ہوتے ہیں وہ ٹیم ایفرٹس ہوتی ہیں. انڈیویجول کریں تو اٹ ڈز ٹیکس 3 to 4 years نا, بہت لمبا لینتھی پروسیجر ہے. تو میں نے کہا ہم لوگ کو بھی کوئی اس طرح کا گروپ بنائیں جس میں ہم لوگ, اس میں لرننگ بہت ہو جاتی ہے. کچھ میتھڈالوجی کے ایکسپرٹ ہوتے ہیں, کچھ اس کی ڈیٹا انالیسس کے ہوتے ہیں, کچھ لٹریچر میں یا تھیوریٹیکل پارٹ ان کا زیادہ اسٹرانگ ہوتا ہے. تو ہم اس پہ کام کر سکتے ہیں. اگر کوئی اچھی ٹیم بن جائے, ہمیں ایک اچھی ٹیم بنانے کی ضرورت ہے. پھر تھک اینڈ فاسٹ آپ کے پیپرس آنا شروع ہو جاتے ہیں, لرننگ آپ کی ملٹیپلائی ہو جاتی ہے. تو دس از واٹ آئی وانٹڈ ٹو شیئر, اینڈ اگر اس میں ہم کچھ کر سکیں تو.
جی سر, نوٹیڈ. آپ کی یہ سجیشن ہم جو ہے نا, مطلب اپنے کنسرن جو ہمارا ڈپارٹمنٹ ہے ان سے بھی بات کر کے ہم کچھ کر لیتے ہیں, اور آپ کو ہم انفارم کر دیں گے انشاءاللہ اس بارے میں.
سر میں اپنا ای میل ایڈریس کہاں پہ ڈراپ کر سکتا ہوں؟
آپ مجھے ای میل کریں گے نا, وہ جو میں نے آپ کو لکھوایا, آپ اس پہ, تو پھر میں آپ کو واپس
انشاءاللہ. تھینک یو جی, تھینک یو.
یو ویلکم.
جی السلام علیکم شعیب بھائی.
السلام علیکم سر, کیا حال ہے, خیریت سے؟ پھر بس ہمارے پاس پارٹیسپینٹس, کچھ انٹرنیشنل پارٹیسپینٹس تو آ گئے, اور فیکلٹی نے بھی جوائن کر لیا. بس ابھی سر کا انتظار ہے, وہ بھی آ جائیں گے. تو ان کا میسج پہ میری بات ہوئی ہے, وہ کہتے ہیں کہ آئی ایم کمنگ, تو بس وہ آتے ہیں تو پھر بتا.
چلیں بس ٹھیک میں
سر آپ لوگوں میں سے کسی نے ملیشیا کا وزٹ کیا ہے؟
ڈاکٹر خرم شہزاد.
اچھا سر.
میں نے بھی
ڈاکٹر قیوم نے بھی ابھی ریسنٹلی کیا.
جی 2 بار کیا ہوا ہے وزٹ ملیشیا کا.
اچھا سر وہ میں ویسے جو ملیشیا کو میں دیکھ رہا تھا تو انہوں نے ایجوکیشن میں بھی بہت زیادہ ترقی کی ہے نا. تو ہم لوگ ان کے ساتھ بڑے ہم تو پتہ نہیں بس یورپ کے کمپلیکس میں مارے جاتے ہیں نا ادھر ہی کرتے ہیں. ان کے ساتھ ہم بڑی زبردست ریسرچ کی لنکیجز بنا سکتے ہیں. اب تو پہلے اکیڈیمیا میں یہ ایکسیپٹیبلٹی نہیں ہوتی تھی نا لانگ ڈسٹینس یا آن لائن. اب تو ان کو بھی بڑا ایک مطلب پتہ چلا ہے کہ اس کے بھی بڑے ایڈوانٹیجز ہیں. ہر چیز آپ ورک شاپس فزیکل نہ کروائیں, اس سے آن لائن کریں تو اس میں پارٹیسپیشن اور برین زیادہ آ جاتے ہیں. تو آپ لوگوں کے لیے یونیورسٹیز کی بڑا اچھی اپرچونیٹی ہے, آپ لوگ یہاں وزٹ کریں, ان کے ساتھ لنکیجز بنائیں. ان سے مطلب جو یہ تو تقریباً بہت زیادہ ریسرچ میں 30-40 ایئرز ہم سے آگے ہیں, تو ہمیں بڑا ایڈوانٹیج ہو سکتا ہے. ان اسٹوڈنٹس کو جو افورڈیبلٹی نہیں ہے تو ان کے ساتھ پروگرام چل سکتے ہیں, اسکالرشپس جنریٹ کی جا سکتی ہیں, فنڈنگس ہو سکتی ہیں. تو پاکستان کے لیے بڑا زبردست اپرچونیٹی ہے اگر ہم لوگ اس پہ کام کریں نا, ملیشین اس پہ ماڈل پہ ہائر ایجوکیشن کے پوائنٹ آف ویو سے.
سر ہمارے ماشاءاللہ لوگ کافی کر سکتے ہیں اور بہت, لیکن کافی سارے اس چیز سے بہت فائدہ اٹھا رہے ہیں پہلے سے ہی. بہت سارے جو ہمارے لوگ ہیں وہ وہاں سے پی ایچ ڈی کر کے آ رہے ہیں.
سر میں اس کے انڈیویجول کی نہیں بات کر رہا, میں یونیورسٹی لیول کی بات کر رہا ہوں. وہ مجھے پتا ہے, مجھے پتا ہے. تھینک یو.
السلام علیکم سر, ڈاکٹر فیضان نے.
السلام علیکم.
وعلیکم السلام.
اچھا جی, السلام علیکم شعیب, کیا حال چال ہے؟ میں ٹھیک ٹھاک. آپ خیریت سے؟
الحمدللہ. آپ نے سر خیریت سے؟
میں فرسٹ کلاس. آواز آ رہی ہے آپ کو؟
جی سر, جی آ رہی ہے. آپ ایک دفعہ اسکرین شیئر کر لیں تاکہ ہم اس کو چیک کر لیں. وی ہیو 5 منٹس تو بس ہم اس کے بعد اسٹارٹ.
میں جی بالکل ابھی کر لیتا ہوں. ایکچولی کیا ہے کہ ایک منٹ,
سر جلدی سے جاتے ہوئے ڈاکٹر صاحب کے لیے, ڈاکٹر فیضان علی صاحب کے لیے کہ یہ ملیشیا میں بھی بہت پاپولر ہیں, بہت بڑا ان کا نام ہے ملیشیا میں, اور یہ ہمارے فخر پاکستان ہے. تو آل دی بیسٹ ٹو یو, گڈ لک.
بہت شکریہ, بہت شکریہ یار, بہت شکریہ.
منانا سر, شکریہ.
شعیب آپ کو سلائڈز نظر آ رہی ہیں؟
جی جی سر, نظر آ رہی ہیں, نظر آ رہی ہیں.
ٹھیک ہے. وہ کیونکہ میں نے اس کو اس طرح سے شیئر کیا ہے کہ اسی ونڈو کے اندر انٹیگریٹ ہو گیا ہے. یہ اسکرین شیئرنگ نہیں ہے. اس کا فائدہ یہ ہے کہ یار مجھے بھی ٹیمز کا سارا لے آؤٹ نظر آتا ہے. نارملی جب آپ स्क्रीन शेयर करते हैं और प्रेजेंटेशन मोड में, तब मुझे नहीं नज़र आ रहा होता कि आप कौन लोग ऑनलाइन है, कौन क्या क्वेश्चन कर रहा है, कैसा है।
ठीक हो गया सर, ठीक हो गया। जफर भाई जरा पार्टिसिपेंट्स के बारे में बता दें ताकि फिर हम लोग स्टार्ट कर लें।
26 सर।
29 सर।
ओके, अभी लोग ज्वाइन कुछ
Fezan, this is Khurram here. Can you hear me?
जी सर, I can hear you clearly.
क्या हाल है, आप ठीक हो?
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason I think we should then start speaking in English is because we have quite a few people from other countries. So,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Khurram Saab, how are you doing?
I'm fine, Alhamdulillah.
Very
And
good.
how's Munal and kids?
Everybody
okay?
is good. Yes, everybody is good. It's early in the morning, so you don't hear them. But
Okay.
hopefully, hopefully you'll see half an hour in the meeting, you might start hearing my kids. They are not the quietest of the kids. So.
Yeah, I know. And can you send me sometime your family pic?
I will.
I haven't seen Munal for quite some time.
I will definitely send you a picture.
Okay, you can send me through Messenger.
Sir, Dr. Khurram.
जी
Dr. Khurram Shahzad.
जी शोएब भाई।
Sir, should we start?
जी प्लीज सर, डॉक्टर साहब को बस फॉर्मली वेलकम कर दें। और अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम, how are you?
जी डॉक्टर साहब मैं ठीक हूँ। खुर्रम शहजाद, फैकल्टी ऑफ मैनेजमेंट साइंसेस, Khalifa यूनिवर्सिटी से सर। We welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for sparing time and being with us, sir. So nice of you.
My pleasure.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening, afternoon and morning to all participants based on the time zone from where you have joined. On the behalf of Faculty of Management Sciences, I would like to welcome all of you on this webinar, How to Publish in Impact Factor. In this webinar, we are honored to have Dr. Hassan Ali with us. Dr. Ali has earned his PhD from UTM Malaysia and published in different well-reputed journals in a brief span of time. Dr. Ali is currently residing in States and working as an assistant professor in University of South Florida. Besides being a regular reviewer, he holds different editorial positions in top-ranked journals like International Journal of Hospitality and Management, Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Technology, International Journal of Contemporary Hospitality Management, and so on. Above all, he is genuine, helping, and humble person. Before any delay, I will ask Dean Faculty of Management Sciences, Professor Dr. Khurram Shahzad, to formally welcome all participants and especially our guest speaker. Over to you, Doctor.
He is my classmate as well.
Okay, sir. Doctor Khurram.
जी शोएब भाई।
सर आप फॉर्मली वेलकम कर दें पार्टिसिपेंट्स को। तो वी हैव पार्टिसिपेंट फ्रॉम KSA एंड मलेशिया आल्सो एंड फ्रॉम इंडिया आल्सो।
Assalamu alaikum ji. I'm Khurram Shahzad, Professor and Dean in Faculty of Management Sciences in Rifa International University. I've already extended my very warm welcome and thank you to Dr. Hassan Ali for sparing his time and being with us. I also like to take this opportunity to thank the international participants from Saudi Arabia, Malaysia and India who actually have been with us in this particular seminar. I'm hopeful that it will be a very learning experience for all of us. So I'll not take much time and request Dr. Hassan Ali to please start his proceedings, sir. Hassan bhai.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Khurram, and also Shoaib for inviting me to talk about this stuff. It's my pleasure. Every time I speak to anybody from Pakistan in an attempt to, enhance their learning as well as my own learning from everybody that I talk to. My name is Hassan Ali. I'm an assistant professor as well as a graduate program coordinator at the College of Hospitality and Tourism Leadership, University of South Florida. And I also work at M3 Center for Hospitality Technology and Innovation, which is part of our college. It's a dedicated research center, so we do work on different research projects and stuff like that. Today's topic, is about how to publish an impact factor journal. But before we get into this, I just wanted to have a disclaimer. Whatever I'll tell you today is not a success formula. So it's not, publishing in SSCI journals or impact factor journals. It's not something like a magic. You would learn the spell and then you would be able to do it. It comes with practice. Obviously, there are no shortcuts to it. It comes with practice. You have to bring in the hustle. You have to do all this. In my own career, here we have also Dr. Khurram Khan. He knows he was my class fellow during PhD times at IBS in Malaysia. He knows that we had to put a lot of time into learning all this craft, right? So it comes with practice. I'll tell you a little bit about my own experiences, and whatever we are covering today is coming from my experience as an author, reviewer, as well as an editor. So if anybody have got any questions throughout this presentation, I will take a couple of breaks in the middle for the questions, so just hold tight. Okay, I promise that I'll take all the questions. The topics that I'll cover today is selecting the right journal. It's very important because when we say impact factor journals, we need to be sure of where are we publishing, which journal is the right journal for our work. Thinking ahead during research, again, like I said, it's a process. So it's important that we make sure that we have planned it way before we send it to a journal. What's the publication process? It's a long process, and obviously it doesn't happen overnight. So what's that process? How do you understand it? What makes a good research paper? And then some common mistakes that we see happening from around the world. It doesn't matter if the papers are submitted from Pakistan or outside of Pakistan. There are a lot of common errors that people make, and how can we avoid those errors, or how should we not do those mistakes? So these are some of the things we'll talk about today, of course, because there's time limitation and I only have 1 hour to talk. So let's dive into these things and dissect them. My own background a little bit, I got my job in 2016. Prior to that, I worked for a year at Florida State University as a postdoctoral scholar. My PhD is in marketing from Malaysia, 2015. Before that, I was in UK for my master's. Pakistan, I belong from Pakistan, so my bachelor's is from Pakistan, business administration and information technology. I've done quite a bit of research. It's not about numbers, but it's about experience. So I've got quite some experience in publishing. My area of research is hospitality and tourism, consumer behavior mainly. I normally do not work in other areas like HR or OB or stuff like that. But I think whatever we talk today is generic enough that can be applied to other fields as well. I also work with advanced statistics and structural equation modeling. So that's a little bit about my background. Like I said, today's talk is actually informed from my experience as an author, which I already talked about a little bit, but also as a reviewer and as an editor. So I serve on multiple editorial boards as an editorial board member, as well as editorial positions. So as a coordinating editor or assistant editor or associate editor or stuff like that. Even now on my desk, I have like 11 papers sitting to review. I hope I can get them done soon. So, the more you review for journals, it also informs you as a researcher. One, you have access to latest research, but then also you see what are the good things that people are doing, what are some bad things that people are doing. To be honest, recently I received a paper from one of the journals to review. I guess it was Services Industry Journal. And it was after a very long time I was reviewing a paper, and I was struggling to really put something on the review comment, because there was really, the paper was pretty much perfect for me, and I really struggled a lot to put even one point on the review sheet. So it happens sometimes you get like really a perfect paper, but it informs you as a researcher on what are some things that you can also do for your papers to make them really stand out and make them as a very good or a perfect paper. Most of the times you get papers that are in the middle. It's like data normality, but then sometimes you also get papers that really puts you off. It happens to me also sometimes, like I get a paper and it destroys my mood for a whole day, because you would see that there are so many basic mistakes in that paper. So you learn a lot from those things. These are some things that I do for different journals and organizations in research capacity, helping me to become a better researcher. Okay, and then my background, a little bit fun side of me. I was talking to Shoaib yesterday about this. And that was in one day we have 24 hours. It's very important that we realize that publishing, research, all these things are good. These are very important. I do it, like I just showed you on the previous 2 slides. I do a lot of research, but then at the same time, I understand that, everybody in this world is replaceable. People come, people go. So as human beings, we should also be mindful of our own selves, our families, and people around us. So research is not the only thing in our life. Yes, it's good that we spend time on research. At the same time, we should also spend time on our own selves, right? Enjoy your life so that you are sane. You should avoid burning out so that you can do good research for a long time. I've seen many people who spend like 16, 17 hours a day working in front of their computers. Don't do that, because if you do that, something like that, you're going to burn out yourself. It just doesn't work that way. I do a lot of fun stuff. I do adventures, hiking, skydiving, thrill rides, things like that. I also travel a lot, though I didn't travel for the last 4 or 5 months, which is sort of a bummer, because I used to travel 4 or 5 times a month, and now 4 or 5 months there's no traveling. I'm a big time foodie, like eating and everything. Cooking is good, I enjoy that, and I'm a huge fan of nature, so I like animals, different type of pets and plants and stuff like that. And these are some pictures that show that I'm not lying. This is what helps me be sane. Now, the good part for all this is that I'm lucky. My area is hospitality and tourism. So what happens is the more I travel, the more it informs me as a researcher. I travel, I see a lot of things around me, and that it makes me curious about working on those things and understanding those phenomena and things like that. So anyway, just on a side note, please enjoy your lives. Research is fun, but very often we don't hear that. Very often we hear people saying that, oh, research is not fun, or it's really irritating, I don't know what to do, blah blah blah. Many of those comments are actually because of being burnt out, or because of spending unnecessarily too much time into this. So enjoy it while you can. I would just say that. Okay, let's move further. Maybe some of you know this. I have a research channel on YouTube. I just wanted to say this: if you want to learn more about research, if you want to learn to much better people than me, I would highly recommend you to checking out this channel. So right now I have quite a lot of videos on it. It's around 49 videos on this channel about different types of research related things. I've interviewed editors. Those interviews are on the channel. I've talked to other people who are very experienced in supervising PhD students. So you can check it out. And then there's a lot of tools that I have tutorials on, so like NVivo, M+, I'm planning to do M+ soon, Smart PLS, Atlas.ti, those type of things. So just check it out, and you can use links to your students if you have students, or if any professors are teaching research methods related courses, just check it out, and I think you will get something positive out of it. All right, let's go very quickly on to this because we have quite a bunch of people, so I think we should not do this. If maybe 3 or 4 people can quickly tell me some problems that they have related to publishing, or is there any fears that you have related to publishing, it would help me a little bit to provide you relevant examples. So maybe 3 to 4 people. You just unmute yourself and just tell me.
Sir, this is Dr. Abdul Qayyum from Rifa International University, Pakistan. Usually we have some conception or concept, or maybe it may be a misconception that European journals, they don't publish from developing countries, and they don't rely on the they don't have show confidence on the data of the developing countries. So is it a reality or just a misconception?
Okay, so Qayyum, a very good question. I think there's part reality, part misconception. But remember one thing before I answer this, even if it's a misconception is formed because of something. Nobody is, automatically having a misconception. So there has to be something that creates a misconception. So first, I don't think all the journals do this, and I don't think majority of the journals do it. There's a small number of journals that do something like this that are a little biased towards certain nationalities, and remember, it's not the journal, it's basically the people who are running the journal, right? So as soon as somebody changes, you would see that the approach of that journal also changes with the change of the editor or the team or whatever. Now, that's one thing. The other thing is, in my own experience, I've seen a lot of unethical things happening. But again, I won't say that it's only from developing countries. It happens from developed countries as well. But mainly, when we see some data coming from developing countries, sometimes authors either do not report the main things related to the data, which creates a misconception that the data has problems, or sometimes authors are not willing to share details. So I have a couple of experiences where we got data, and me, another reviewer, and the editor, we thought that there's a problem with the data. And when we asked the authors to submit an explanation, the authors decided to withdraw the paper. So when something like this happens, then obviously you get an idea that maybe there was something wrong with the data. So generally, it's not a common practice, but yes, sometimes journals do have bias towards certain countries or nationalities, or whatever names of the authors, so something like that. Okay. Any other fear or problem? Another 2 or 3 people.
Sir, if someone is not asking, then I find it an opportunity to have a similar question.
Jay.
Okay, I think Shoaib is trying to say something. Okay, I give him opportunity to say his talk.
Sure. Shoaib, you are asking a question? Shoaib, were you asking a question? Okay, Qayyum, go ahead. Ask.
Okay, sir, similar type of question. That sometimes we say that there should be some international collaboration for the sake of generalization, and to find some good data from other countries, and to have a good experience with other people. It's a good thing to have international collaboration. But just sometimes people I see around here, they just make international collaboration to have some English name in their papers. So it increase the acceptability of the paper. So what's your comment about?
Okay, so yes, you're right. Look, like I said, sometimes these type of things happen which creates a misconception, right? You're right. I think that it's not only the English name, but also sometimes people, okay, somebody is sharing their screen. I don't know who is sharing the screen. Um, Whoever is sharing the screen, can you stop sharing your screen, please? Okay, so what I was saying is that normally it's not the English name, but it's also the affiliation. I normally get some requests from Pakistan, partly from India, saying that can you please publish something with us? You don't have to do anything, but we just want to put your name on the paper so that it has a better chance. Unfortunately, this type of things happen, but you shouldn't be doing this because I don't think it matters. Like I said, for most of the journals, what matters is your quality of your work. I've seen amazing work done by people from developing countries, like really, even from Pakistan. When I see some papers published in top tier journals, it's unbelievable. Like I just, I guess a couple of days ago, I saw one paper in a top hospitality journal published by some researchers from IPA in Sakhar. I guess Wahid Umrani was one of the authors. So it doesn't matter. I mean, for most of the journals, if your work is good, it's good because reviewers don't know who the authors are, right? So reviewers don't know that. That's why it's important that you should focus on your work. Now, if you approach anybody who has any type of standards, ethical standards, they would simply tell you that, yes, I can work with you, but I'll have to contribute in your work in order for me to put my name on your work. At least I do that. I mean, if somebody approaches me and say like, I want to work with you, I mean, if there are anybody here in the list and I see a couple of people who I have worked with, you would know that I have to contribute quite a bit in the paper to justify my name on the paper. Not only because of ethics, but also because in the future, if you go somewhere, let's say, and somebody have read your paper and they ask you a question about that paper, you don't want to say that, oh, I don't know about that paper because I didn't work on it. So it's just that type of thing. I don't think that mainly if you put a foreign author's name or affiliate somebody's name because of their affiliation, that enhances your chances of publishing your paper.
Sir, thank you very much for your clarification and a very comprehensive answer. Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know who is sharing the screen. I really don't know.
It's Ikra Hussain. Ikra Hussain, can you please stop sharing your screen?
Okay, perfect. Here you go. All right, let me open up my PowerPoint again. Let me open my PowerPoint again so that we don't have a problem like this. Okay. It's going to take a minute to upload because all of a sudden
I would request admin to disable other people to share their screens. So I think it won't create any problem, inshallah.
Zafar bhai, can you please help us? Zafar bhai.
Okay, sir. Don't worry. Okay, so we already talked about some of these problems and fears. Obviously, we'll stop a couple of times during the presentation as well to take some questions. But let's go ahead and talk about what is my experience with research. So my experience with research started in 2012 when I started my PhD in Malaysia. And I've done quite a bit of work during my PhD there as well. Like there was not a lot of commitments, obviously, no kids, nothing like that. So I spent a lot of time on my PhD. I had some amazing friends. Dr. Khurram is here. He was one of them. Obed was another very good friend, and we had a lot of discussions. So that time during PhD informed me a lot. actually it developed me as a person as well as a researcher there. And then after UTM, I joined this one group on Facebook called Doctorate Support Group. It has close to like 70,000. Now I guess it has around 90 something thousand people. And I'm a very active member of Doctorate Support Group. So again, this group, many people, most of them are PhD students or some master students, professors, researchers, and all this. And this group is a very active group. So people post their questions, their problems, their issues, and then other people respond to them. So again, if you are part of this group, you would see that it also helps you learn a lot about research and also helps you learn a lot about the problems that people have as researchers. Later, I worked with Dr. Kashif Hussain at Taylor's University for almost 1.5 years on different research projects. We published together as well. And then right now, I'm working with students in US, UK, Pakistan, China, Malaysia, master students as well as PhD students. So some of them I'm supervising, some of them I'm examining. And again, this helps me as a researcher. Now, what I realize is that many people who talk to me and many people who don't talk to me, but I see them posting on social media, what I realize is that many people think of research as something like this, okay? And you would see these type of funny pictures on social media, right? You go to social media and you see these type of pictures. Or maybe something like this one. Maybe most of you have seen something like this. Now, what's funny about all this is that we look at things like this, we laugh, and then it's gone. And then we see something like this again, we laugh, and then it's gone. But what happens is that when we look at something like this, in our subconscious, two things happen. One is we make fun of our own profession as researchers. This is number one. Number two is people who are not in our field, like people who don't have PhDs, people who are not doing research. They look at all this and they get some sort of a demotivation of getting into PhD. So imagine young scholars, right? Like, to be honest, I don't see a lot of people around us who actually support their kids to go for PhD. Actually, if many of you would know this, if you tell your parents or your family members that you want to go for PhD, yeah, maybe sometimes you get a support, but most of the times your friends, your cousins, your aunties, your uncles would say that, wow, so you still want to study? Oh, this is the time for you to earn and you want to go for studying more? Things like this, those type of comments. So, and I actually think that a lot of this is because we as researchers do not take ownership of research and we don't really spread out positive stuff about research. And what happens is when we look at all these things, many people think of publishing research as like something impossible or something very scary or something very difficult. I've even seen people who never submit a paper to a journal, yet they spread out negativity saying that it's very difficult. And it's very interesting that if you never tried publishing, how can you think it's very difficult? Dr. Khurram, you had a question? I see you had a raised hand thing.
Dr. Faizan, your slides are not visible. At least to me, I don't know about the others.
It's not visible?
We can see. I can see at least.
नहीं सर मुझे भी नजर I cannot see as well.
It is can't display content.
Yes,
I can see, sir.
I think it's an issue at the end of most parts.
We can see, sir.
Yeah, I think maybe it's an issue with the participants. You know what? Let me share the slides outside of. So let me. Can you guys see now the ones who couldn't see it?
Yeah, now it is visible, sir.
Okay, ठीक हो गया. I guess it was because of I was trying to do it within the Teams, so let's just do it from here. Acha. Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So, okay. Now, like I said, many people then think that publishing is something difficult. I actually don't think it's very difficult. It's like any other craft, okay? I don't know how many of you know swimming or not, but you know, when you learn swimming, the first time you jump into the water, you may be scared. The second time, may be scared. The third time, you may think, wow, it's very difficult. But once you know swimming, it becomes very easy. You can jump into the water wherever you want and you start swimming. Those of you who know how to ride a bicycle or a motorcycle or how to drive a car, think about the first time when you just sat in a car to drive it or got on a bike to ride it. Difficult. There's a fear to it, right? But then once you know how to do it, it gets very easy. It becomes like normal to you. I guess publishing papers is the same thing. What matters is what you are publishing. That's the most important thing. So many of us focus too much on how to publish, and we ignore the fact that what to publish. That's very important. So today we'll talk a little bit about also what to publish. And once you know what to publish, it becomes easier how to publish, because many people are interested in what you are publishing and not how you are publishing it. All right, anyway, people have this perception because of this negativity, because of these misconceptions or perceptions or stuff like this, that they hate research, or you know, publishing research papers is difficult or it's impossible. And in reality, it's not the case. I think what needs to be done is this: understand that research is something that is going to make you confused. It's something that is going to make you headaches. That's true. Because if you're doing good research, that should confuse you at the start. Because if you are not confused, that means that everything is sorted out and you don't have something new to think about, right? So imagine this: if I go and I start looking into research that is about consumer behavior, and I look into how customer satisfaction leads to customer loyalty, this is something that 10,000 people have done before me. So of course, when I go to the literature, I can find so much support for it, and it would never confuse me. I can just start writing about it. I can write a page or 2 pages and I'm good. But the thing is that it would be very difficult for me to publish it, or it would be very difficult for me to justify my research to other people, because everybody would tell me, what's new in your work, right? You are reinventing the wheel or something like this. Recently, I was working on a research paper with one of my colleagues. I guess she is online as well, Sedan. And we were working on how people react to branding strategies amidst pandemics. So one variable that we were looking at was social distancing, or people's attitude towards social distancing. This is something completely new. There's no literature on social distancing. I mean, there is some literature about when people have limited mobility. There's some research done on, let's say, curfews or things like this, where the government forces people not to go out of the home, but nothing about social distancing. So really, when we were writing the literature about that, it pushed me a lot, because there's no literature and you have to be creative to think about how do you write about it. And that is something valuable, because even though it's not published yet, I was approached by a couple of people asking me for the scale that I use to measure this perception towards social distancing. So remember that when you are doing something valuable, something new, that should confuse you. This is a very good quote that I like. Basic research is what I am doing when I don't know what I am doing. And I think all of you should be like that. Be curious in order to, do some valuable research. And then the second thing which is important is that to understand that we all cannot be good at everything that we do. It's impossible. You can be good at certain things, but also realize that you have limitations with other things. To be honest, my biggest problem until, even now, I write papers. It's very okay for me to write literature review, introduction, methodology, analysis, but I struggle with implications. I struggle with writing conclusion in the end. Till now. So, a lot of people that I worked with, they know that normally I find collaborations where I ask them, okay, I'll do these things and then I'll need your help to write discussion or conclusion. And sometimes I work with people that are very busy. So some professors that I'm working with who are very busy, then in that case I tell them that, okay, what we'll do is we'll write, I'll try to write the discussion, even though I understand that that's my limitation, and I want you to expand that discussion or expand that section on implications or things like this. So understand that we all are not perfect, we have limitations, and we should ask for help. Now the question is, how do we ask for help? That's also something that we need to understand, that when we are asking for help, we should acknowledge that we are asking for help, and we should appreciate the help we are getting from other people. Now, sometimes what happens is that I get a message from somebody saying that I need your help to review my paper. I haven't submitted it yet. I want your feedback on my paper. And I say, okay, sure, I'll do that. And then they send me the paper. And then after 2 hours, they're pushing me, where's the feedback? Where's the feedback? Where's the feedback? It's just not possible. So be realistic when you are asking help. Just appreciate, that other people are busy. And if they're helping you, please acknowledge that. And, like earlier, Qayyum asked me a question about developing countries, this and that. Many times these type of things create a misconception, and we never know. These days, everybody talks to everybody. So if you do something wrong to somebody that you don't really know, that person may go and talk to another 100 people and tell them about you or about the country you are from or about the university you are from, which is not good, right? So that is very important for all of us to know. Another thing is, how do we ask for help in terms of positioning our questions? So many times you would know, if you are on any social media groups related to research, you would see that people ask these questions. I've seen this question so many times that, can somebody help me with a topic related to marketing? Or can somebody help me with a topic related to OB? Which actually says a lot about the person who is asking this question as a researcher. Right? So I think a better way of asking this question is do some work, come up with 5 to 10 ideas, and then ask a question, which of these topics is a good topic, or which of these topics is a much more trending topic or a recent topic. That would be a much better way of asking this question compared to asking what should be my topic or give me a topic or something like that, right? So now, what is research? Now, because of the time limitation, I cannot open it to participants to answer this question, but normally I ask this question and people answer so many things. People say good research is finding the truth or answering the questions or finding the unknown, or, research means search it again and again or stuff like that. I think the best research is, like a small kid. We are all adults, and we do a lot of things based on social acceptance of things. Like we won't, that if you are in Pakistan, you will not go out without a shirt on the street because of social acceptance, right? A lot of things we, because of biasness, because of a lot of things, we don't do them. But if you think about the kids, like 5-year-old kid, 6-year-old kid, 4-year-old kid, you will see that they're very open to ideas, right? They would do things, and most of the times, if you tell them don't do this, they will do it. And the reason for that is because they're very curious. So I think that a good research is something that starts with curiosity. You have to question things around yourself. My favorite definition of research is it's formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose, right? So you have to poke somebody, you have to poke a phenomena around you. I normally give this example in different workshops. Just imagine if you are traveling on a bus, okay, and one of you go and poke another person, what would happen? Maybe the other person looks at you and ignore you, but if you go and poke the same person again, maybe this time, the person you poke would be a bit angry. The third time, very angry the fourth time, you may not have your finger. So something like that. And then you can come up with a theory saying that you don't poke people for no reason in a bus, otherwise you will lose your finger. So that would be a theory. But this theory comes after formalized curiosity, right? So you poke the same person 4 times to see what's going to happen. It's the same thing with research. So look around yourself and think about it. Why is it happening? What's going on? What's new about it, right? Get inspired from things around yourself. These days we have this problem of COVID-19, right? And we see a lot of papers coming out because of COVID-19. In fact, I'm doing a special issue for a hospitality journal about COVID-19 and hospitality and tourism. We got close to 80 submissions for that special issue. And when we were reviewing the abstracts, you would see that most of the abstracts are very basic. So what people are doing is asking the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality, the impact of COVID-19 on job satisfaction, the impact of COVID. In my opinion, this is actually not a good research because, I mean, COVID-19 will finish after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or 2 months. Then your papers, nobody is going to read your papers about those things. So I think if you are doing some research on COVID-19, make sure that you are doing it much more generic than COVID-19, because these pandemics and these things will come again and again. I mean, God forbid, hopefully we don't see anything like this in the future, but it's going to happen again. And so your work should inspire people in the future as well, not just now. Have you ever thought, why do we still use some of the theories that were presented 70 years ago, or 80 years ago, or 100 years ago? Because those people were future thinkers. So even now when you are doing your work, make sure that you think about it from a very generic perspective. And also my suggestion is, if you are interested in working on COVID-19, don't just say that the impact of COVID-19 on this, because COVID-19 in itself is nothing. It's an object. So Shoaib has invited me to talk here. Shoaib is also an object in terms of research, right? Shoaib is a person. If I want to measure Shoaib, I cannot measure Shoaib, but I can measure Shoaib's attributes, right? So I can say that if I want to study, let's say, the impact of Shoaib, if Shoaib is a lecturer, he's a professor, the impact of Shoaib on student satisfaction, I can't do that because Shoaib is not measurable. He is an object. But what I can do is I can try to investigate the impact of Shoaib's anger on student satisfaction, or the impact of Shoaib's friendliness on student satisfaction. So if you say the impact of COVID-19 on something, it means nothing. What you need to do is you need to think about some attributes of COVID-19. Maybe think about this, the impact of job loss on something. And job loss is because of COVID-19. That type of research would be much more valuable than just putting COVID-19 in the title of your paper. Anyway, let's look at why do we publish. So there are a lot of reasons we publish, right? We publish because of our degrees, it's needed to publish. We publish to get promotion, we publish to get funding and all these things. But have you ever thought these are all our internal reasons for getting published, right? These are all our internal reasons for getting published. But how many reviewers or how many editors do care about these reasons? None. Okay, so you never write a cover letter saying that, dear editor, I'm submitting this paper because I want to get promotion. Or dear editor, I'm submitting this paper to your journal because I need to get funding, or I need to finish my PhD, or things like this. Now, sometimes people do that, and if you do that, you are actually putting you into a very difficult position, because editors, even though they are human beings, maybe they also care about these things, but for them, it's not important to publish a work because of the work published, because of the work submitted to get promotion or get funding or get a degree. The ultimate thing is, what is new in your work? What is the main contribution of your work to the field, right? So remember that publishing is important, but you need to make sure that you are positioning your paper in a way that is attractive for the editor as well as the readers of the journal, right? So that's important. Now, how does a research process look like? this, right? You investigate a careful study, and then there's this process, and then you discover something. In reality, it's not like this. Actually, a couple of days ago, I shared something very funny on my Facebook, and that was that sometimes I get up to take a break for 10 minutes, and then after 6 months, I realize that I took a break, which happens to a lot of us. It's very difficult to focus these days because there's so much things happening around us. And it's difficult to get time for publishing things, right? So those of us who publish, other people might think that, publishing is good. You just sit in front of a computer, you do a lot of literature review, collect data, analyze data, and then you come up with your findings, and then you're done. That's your paper. In reality, that's not the case. In reality, your research process looks like this. You start your research, a lot of things happen, a lot of things irritate us, a lot of things motivate us, demotivate us, and things like that, which actually, puts you into a difficult position to finish your research on time. So this is important to acknowledge. We don't have to be like a cat. All right. Okay, can I request the moderator to mute the mics, please?
Zafar bhai, please. Zafar bhai, can you please? Done, sir, done.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm actually wearing the headphones, and it's really
Yeah,
so.
we can understand, sir.
Okay, so yeah, so in reality, the research process is not as linear as we think about it, right? But we don't have to be like a cat, like a pigeon that looks at a cat, closes the eyes, and then thinks that the cat doesn't see me, right? We have to acknowledge that, in our lives, there's a lot of stuff happening, and we have to find time around our schedules, around all those distractions to do our research. Very important. We are all human beings, even though I see that my good friend Stan is online and he does a lot of robotics stuff. We are not robots. We are human beings, and there's a lot of stuff with us. There's a lot of things happening to us. So it's important to acknowledge that, during our research processes. Where do we start? So you want to publish a good research, where do you start? You start with a good topic. You need to have something very interesting to work on in order for people to read your work, to be attracted towards your work. So we start a good research with a good research topic. How do we come to a good research topic? Once we have a good knowledge of the literature. So once you understand your literature, you would know that what's done, what's not done. What's done, how can you do it from a different perspective? So you need to have a good knowledge of the literature in order to come up with a good research topic. How can you have a good knowledge of the literature? You need to read a lot. The more you read, the better you get at the literature. Now, the problem here is that when it comes to reading, many of us only read published research. So, when you go to your supervisors or people, they would only ask you to read journal articles. Please don't do that. If you want to come up with good research ideas, good research topics, do not only focus on research articles, because remember this, if you go to any journal now and you pick up the latest research that is published there, even like there are many journals moving to article-based publication, which means as soon as your paper is accepted, within a week or so, it gets online and then people can read it. So even though if you go to any journal now and pick up the latest article published there, think about it. That article took a few months through the review process. Then a few months before the review process, it was being written. Your data was collected much earlier than that. So even the latest articles that you see now are working on something that is at least 1 to 1.5 years old. And the world changes so much, right? These days, the world is changing so quickly. Think about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, before COVID-19, and think about it now. The world has changed so much in 3-4 months, right? So 1 to 1.5 years can change the world really a lot. So if you're only focusing on journal articles, you're missing out on a lot of stuff, a lot of recent stuff. And that's why most of the research these days that you read, you would see there's nothing new in it, right? It's just repeating the same thing again and again. So when we say literature review, look into the industry magazines, look into industry articles, industry shows, go to some exhibitions, some shows. I was in Malaysia. Malaysia is pretty big on business tourism, and there's a lot of exhibitions, a lot of industry trade shows and stuff like this. And when you go to these shows, you see the cutting edge stuff happening in your field, right? I was interested in technology, and I was lucky to work with Dr. Kashif in Malaysia on a project related to business tourism. So the best part about that project was I had free entry to many exhibitions and many conventions related to different things, mostly technology. So when I would go there, we'd have access to these things. In Florida, we have a big show called Synapse. It happens every year. And when you go there, you would see that what is some cutting edge technology that is coming into the world. I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, I went to this one show in Florida called Synapse. There was a company that created small earphones. So there are earphones, you can put it into your ears. And what those earphones do is they stimulate your neurons in your brain to make you feel comfortable, right? So if you are working in a high, in an intensive industry where there's a lot of noise and a lot of pressure, you can wear those earphones for 10 minutes. That would make you calm down, make you relax with some sort of music that touches your neurons. Now, this thing doesn't exist. Like that product that they were showing was a prototype, doesn't exist. But they told me that they would be willing to work with me on a research study to see how people react to something like this. All of a sudden, just talking to that person, I think Siddhan was there with me, just talking to that person for 10 minutes gives me a lot of ideas to work on for research and something new, something that doesn't exist in the industry, right? So industry shows can be one thing of looking at it. Social media is another one. These days you see things get viral, right? So anything that you see is very interesting, something new, somebody is sharing, especially in social entrepreneurship domain or social marketing, not social media marketing, but social marketing domain, where people are doing amazing stuff for the communities. You can look at those things, get inspiration for some research that you can work on. Look at blogs. People are writing blogs. People are sharing stuff on blogs. And in fact, this morning I saw one of my friends. She is at University of Surrey, Liz. She is working on technology and hospitality and tourism, and she did something very amazing. She created a website called Tourism 2030, I guess. And what they did was they sent out emails to people and to ask them to write an email. So it's like I got an email from her, and she requested me to take part in their study. And the study is very simple. I have to write an email to my family or friends from the future. So I should imagine myself in 2030 or in 2040 taking a vacation and sending an email back to my friends and family today to tell them how the future looks like. And now she is going to take all those emails, which are amazing. So people have wrote a lot of stuff into it. She put it on a blog website, and she's going to analyze it about how the future of travel and tourism would look like in 2030 or 2040. So these are unique ways of doing it. But again, this is a blog, right? So you can also look at blogs, listen to podcasts. Many people don't do that. There are a lot of free podcasts available on Apple, iTunes. YouTube has a lot of webinars that people are doing, especially if you are in marketing. There are quite a few shows that happen every month or every week where people talk about emerging things in marketing, and you can get a lot of ideas from there to do your research. So when we say good research comes from literature review, please make sure that you are not only looking at journal articles, but a lot of other sources that can give you good idea about what's happening in the industry, or what are some cutting edge things that you can work on for producing good type of research. A good example of this, right now I'm working on a paper related to privacy and personalization. which is privacy personalization paradox. The idea basically came from this article that was published in the Financial Brand. And this was about banking. I have nothing to do with banking. I'm in hospitality and tourism, but just looking at this article, it gave me an idea of working on privacy and personalization paradox in hospitality and tourism. Another example is one of my articles is about airports, or the problems at the airports also come from my personal experience. I was traveling to Hong Kong, and then during my travel, I see a lot of stuff that went wrong into my travel. Obviously, there's no time to explain the details, but that gave me an idea of working on research related to problems in the airlines and how it impacts people's perception of the airline brands. A very good research just got published in Journal of Travel Research. So that type of stuff. Now, where do you publish? So you need to find it out. One way of looking at it is go to Web of Science or Web of Knowledge and find the journal. Now, these days what's happening is that many journals on their website, they put the impact factor, even though they are not part of Web of Science. And what they do is they simply use the formula, how many papers they published, how many citations they got, and then they just put it on the front page of their website, saying that my impact factor is 10, my impact factor is 5, my impact factor is 8. I think what you need to do is the best way, just go to Journal Citations Report, or you go to this SSCI master list. So simple, very simple, go to Google, write SSCI master list. When the list comes, just put the name of the journal there. Once you put the name of the journal there, you would see if this journal is really an SSCI or not. That's very simple. Or another way of doing it is go to Google, write Web of Science Journal Finder. And there they would ask you to put the abstract of your study in there. So put the abstract of your study, and then they would recommend you some journals that are in SSCI related to the work that you are doing. So remember, just because a journal, now, yeah, if you are going and to any reputed publisher's website, let's say if you are going to Science Direct or Emerald or Taylors and Francis or something like this, and those publishers have journals, and those journals have put it on their website saying that our impact factor is this or that, that you can trust. So if you are going to a standalone journal, let's say just any journal, right? These days you might have a lot of emails, International Journal of Business Knowledge and Nursing and whatever, blah, blah. And you go, even to me, the name sounds very fake. But if you go to the website of the journal, they even put that impact factor 5 point something. Well, it's not possible. So how can you check it? Just go to SSCI master list and check if the journal is listed there or not. That's the easiest way to find out if the journal is in SSCI or not. How do we calculate impact factor? Very simple. We look at how many papers are published in a journal for the last 2 years. So if, let's say now we are in 2020, the impact factor for the journals will be out, I guess, on June 20th or something. So if to calculate the impact factor for 2020, they need to see how many papers were published in 2019 and 2018. So if a journal has published, let's say, 50 papers in, if a journal has published, let's say, 100 papers in the last 2 years, and they've got 50 citations, right? Then what would happen is that you would calculate the impact factor dividing the citations divided by the number of papers that are published in that journal. So 50 by 100 is 0.5. Now, obviously, all the journals want to increase their impact factor, right? So if I am an editor, I want my journal to have much more impact factor than 0.5. How can I do that? I can do that by reducing the number of papers I'm publishing, or by increasing the citations I'm getting. Well, increasing or decreasing the number of papers that I publish is not easy, because you have contracts with the publisher. Most of the journals want to publish more papers because there are more papers being sent to the journals. So then the only way to increase the impact factor is to increase the citations from 50 to, let's say, 250. That way my impact factor will become 2.5. That is why there's so much pressure on the editors to really accept papers that they think can get a lot of citations. Now, Is it true that editors can guess this all the time? Yeah, maybe sometimes, but not all the time. So that's why even the papers that are published in very good journals sometimes don't get cited at all, right? So you would see that many papers don't get cited. And part of it is because the paper has nothing new. Part of it is because the paper is not discoverable, or part of it is because the authors have not done a good job in sharing their paper with others who could cite their papers, right? So in any case, what's important is that do something valuable, do something that the editors would think that people are going to publish, people are going to cite in the future. So maybe that can come from the topic that you are using. So your topic should be good enough, new enough, so that the people in the next 2 or 3 years can cite it. Or your paper should be on a very controversial topic, or your paper should be using something very unique or innovative that other people can cite in the future. Or sometimes we forget this, but your conclusion should be very strong enough. You should provide good suggestions in the end, so that when somebody uses your suggestions, they can cite your paper. So just do something in your paper that makes it citable in the future, which increases the chances of getting published. All right, so let's look at some very important points here. One is how many papers can I publish with one data set? So this question comes very often. I have a data set, how many papers should I publish on it? It's very important because many people try to publish many papers with one data set. I think you can publish as many papers as you want with one data set. What's important is that each paper should be distinct enough from the other. You should provide enough contribution in each paper and make it different from others, and then you can publish. But in my opinion, you cannot publish more than, let's say, 2, or if you're very, very creative, 3 papers from one data set, because in order to do that, you have to collect data for so many different variables. And then if your questionnaire is that long, the data quality is not good, because people who are reading your questionnaire, it's very difficult for them to answer so many questions. So it doesn't matter how many papers you publish with one data set, as far as those papers are good enough and distinct enough from each other. But also, what's important is that even if you're publishing one paper with one data set, your paper should offer something new or contribute to the literature or industry or whatever, but your paper should contribute something. The other one is the words, figures, and data must be original. So please avoid plagiarism. Don't do that. Whatever you do, don't play with the data. Don't do that. And if you do something, right, because sometimes you have to do some thing with your data, let's say delete something or normalize your data or whatever you do, please report it. That's very important. Like I said, if there are any errors with your data, report them. If you report them, you are safe, right? At least you are telling the editor and the reviewers and the readers in the future that I collected data, this was wrong, and this is what I did. Now remember that when you publish your paper, I say this quote all the time, that a paper that you publish, any of the papers that you publish, is even more important than your own marriage, because when you are married and you have problems, you can still divorce, right? You separate and that's done. Yes, we don't want to do that, but you can do that. But if you are doing a paper and there's something wrong with your paper, you cannot remove your name from that paper, even after you leave this world, even after you die. I mean, how many of us still cite Maslow? How those people who are working on culture, how many of you still cite Hofstede? He died last year, right? So remember that your names are on your papers for whenever the world is. So you need to make sure that whatever you are doing, whatever you are publishing in that paper is ethical. You should do everything ethically. Collaborations, earlier somebody asked questions about collaborations, I guess Qayyum. Collaborations are very important, but you should understand when you are collaborating, why you are collaborating, what's the reason. In fact, some journals now even require you to tell what everybody has contributed on the paper. So collaborations are important. If you want to get the most out of your collaborations, make sure you are collaborating with people who can contribute something. So this can be intellectual contribution. This can be sometimes financial contribution to deal with. If you are submitting it to an open access journal, some authors have funding, they can help you, but that should not be the only contribution. The author should also provide more contributions. There's actually a list that I can share with you after this presentation. There's an organization that provides the types of contributions that people can make, what counts as contribution in a paper from authors, right? So multiple things you can do. The other thing is that when you're collaborating with somebody, make sure that they bring something different to the table that you don't know or you're weak at, and that way you can bring more synergy in the papers. And like I said previously, all the authors in the paper should make a substantive contribution to the paper. They should make something valuable into the paper, not because their name is an English name or their affiliation is something from a developed country or something like that. Don't do those type of things. If you add or drop authors from your papers, even though you are the first author, you are the main author, make sure that all the other authors know about it. It should be done with full disclosure so that everybody is on the same page. Now, these are some important points that I had to discuss, but then also publication process. So how does the publication process happen? Many of us, when we submit our papers as authors, what we do is when you submit, after that, every day you go and check the status of the paper. Every day, maybe 3 times, maybe 5 times. So you should understand, as an author, when you submit your paper, for you it's just the submission and then checking the status. But for editors and reviewers, it's not like that. It's a long process, right? There are a lot of steps. Sometimes people struggle in finding reviewers. I mean, I'm dealing with this now. Sometimes I have to send the paper to 16 or 17 people in order to get at least 2 reviewers for that paper. It's very difficult. In fact, sometimes I have to send the paper to the same family, like 2 people in the same family, which doesn't happen too often. Once in a while, but it happens because you have to find the right reviewers for the papers, and it's difficult, So anyway, most of the time in the review process is spent during reviewer invitation and when the paper is in the review. And what happens is the more times you revise the paper, the more time you get, the more time it gets for the paper to get published. That is why all these important things that I just talked about, it's important that you focus on all those main points, because if you make those type of mistakes, this is going to bring back, it's going to give you another round of revision, spending more time off your paper. So avoid all those mistakes in order to reduce the time to get published. So I would just say that. This is very important when you are submitting a paper. Make sure you read the author guidelines. So each journal, every journal, whether it's a standalone journal, whether it's published by a publisher, they provide author guidelines. So read those guidelines before you submit the paper, because that creates the first impression. And if you don't do that, you're actually putting you in a negative perception of the editor, because the editor looks at your paper first. So just don't do that. What makes a good paper? So number one, it's originality. What's new in your paper, right? And new is not only the topic, it can also be your respondents. Maybe you are doing the research in a new context. The context is new. However, you should justify the context. It's not like many times you may have seen this, and if there are any editors in the talk now, you would also know this. Many times people submit their papers and they say that, okay, the contribution of my paper is that I'm doing it in this particular country. Let's say this research has been tested in blah, 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 but it has never been tested in Pakistan, so I'm doing it and that's the contribution. That's not enough. Even if you are doing it in Pakistan, you should try to highlight what is so special in Pakistan. What is important in the context of Pakistan that makes that study valuable, right? That's important to talk about. Treatment, which is methodology. Maybe you're doing a new methodology, a very unique methodology. In fact, I'll show you something. I have a headset like this one that actually captures your brain activity, what's happening in your brain. So because I work on consumer behavior, normally when I collect data, I ask people to report their emotions on paper, right? So they look at the question on the questionnaire that says, I'm happy. And then they select an option from strongly disagree to strongly agree. I am sad, I am bored, I am frustrated. So sometimes I collect data like this. But now we have a new method of collecting data about emotions, and that is using a headband that can capture your brain activity. So maybe you can tell me you are happy, but your brain is actually not happy, right? So that's a new methodology, a new method of collecting data. So if I do that, that brings enough contribution because it's a new way of looking at people's emotions. Or sometimes your results can be new. So what happens is many times when people's hypotheses are not supported, they just think that their research is not good. I think what's important is if your hypotheses are not supported, look into it. Why do you think the hypotheses are not supported? And that brings me back to the same thing. Like I said, your subject, the context of the study. So many times your hypotheses are not supported because your context is something very unique. So if your hypotheses are not supported, look at it in the light of your context. What's special in your context that makes your hypothesis not supported? Discuss those, because that can also be a good contribution in your research. Then relevance. So your work should be relevant to the existing knowledge. You cannot do something completely new or something completely out of date, right? So if you're doing something, make sure it's relevant to the existing knowledge and you're extending the existing knowledge. The third one is methodology. Are your methods valid and objective? So how would we know that? We would know that if you provide enough details, okay, so that other people can replicate it. So many times in methodology section, people say what they have done, like I've used a questionnaire or I use this particular type of sample. They explain what they have done, but they do not explain why they have done it. So when you are writing your methodology, make sure that you not only say what you have done, but also say why you have done that thing. It's very important. Then the fourth one is communication. So many times what happens is that when people are writing papers with collaborators, multiple people are working on the same paper, the communication goes out of the window, right? Because you don't have clarity, the structure is missing, there's multiple types of writing styles and things like that. So make sure that your communication is clear, because remember, if you do something really amazing, like really, really amazing, but you cannot communicate it to the authors or editors or reviewers, there's no point of it. So you have to make sure that whatever you are doing, you should communicate it in a clear or structured or a quality way. So that's another one. And the last one is your argument should be very sound and logical. So make sure that you are providing everything based on logical argument. Like I said, not only say what you are doing, but also say why you are doing it. But that should be a logical one, right? There should be a logical argument behind everything. For implications, it should not only be theoretical, but also practical implications. Now, it depends on what journals you are selecting. So in hospitality, we have a journal called Cornell Quarterly. Cornell Quarterly has an important thing called focusing on practical implications. So you must focus on practical implications. It doesn't matter what you are doing, your discussion part should say what is important for industry in it. But then we also have journals that are predominantly focusing on theory, like Annals of Tourism Research, pretty big on theoretical contributions. So you should make a significant theoretical contribution. And then we have another thing called recency and relevancy of topic and references. So this one, again, as a reviewer, I see this problem when I look at the reference list. The latest reference these days would be from 2015 or 2014. Whenever I see something like this, it's a big off, because it means that the authors have not done up-to-date literature review, which is not a good idea. So make sure when you are doing your paper, and the main reason why this happens is because many people convert their PhD thesis or their MS thesis into a paper. And that happens 2 years or 3 years after the literature review was done. So if you are doing that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but make sure that you are updating your literature review so that you have recent and relevant references in your paper. These are some examples of the reviews that I have done. You would see that very clearly I've mentioned here that, the references that you provided to justify your study are very outdated. Or your paper was good, whatever justification was there, it was based on outdated references and stuff like this. That's important. Internationality, earlier somebody asked me a question, if we have an international author, would that enhance the chances of getting published? Not the author, but the internationality of your paper. Now, what happens is sometimes there's a journal called International Journal of Hospitality Management. The name of the journal says International Journal of Hospitality Management, but somebody submits a paper saying that a study of a particular village in India or in Pakistan or in Sri Lanka, that doesn't really, touches the readership of the journal, because the journal is an international journal. So make sure that your paper has an international component to it. And how can you do that? It's very simple. I'm not saying that don't do research on smaller places. You can certainly do that, but make sure that you are doing some sort of benchmarking. Compare your results to other studies from other countries that are in similar contexts or similar places. That way you bring an international component of your research. But wherever possible, make sure do comparisons, collect data from multiple samples from different countries and then compare them. When you do that, also make sure there's a base for that comparison. So if, let's say, you are collecting data from Malaysia and Indonesia and you are doing this research, maybe there's not a lot of relevance because Malaysia and Indonesia are very similar in their approach to tourism, or people are very similar, language is similar, culture is a little similar. So maybe you cannot talk a lot about different things, right? But maybe if you want to do some research on, let's say, US and China, makes a lot of sense because the countries are so different, the culture is different, way of living is different. So then you can bring some interesting comparisons in your research. I have a good friend, editor of Tourism Review, Professor Buhalis. He said this sometimes, but he called it my mother's village syndrome. I call it my grandmother's village syndrome. And what does it mean? It's very simple. Like when you go to talk to your grandmother, she always would have this thinking about her village, and she would say, my village was like this. Oh. Okay. Okay. If you talk to your grandmother, she would always have this memories of her village, and she would always tell you, my village was good, my village was like that. Don't be like that for your research. I mean, good to have this research on your village, but then make sure you are comparing it to some other villages just to bring out some more implications. Maybe what is something special in your village that others are not doing, or what is so important, what is lacking in your village that other villages are doing and you are not doing. So those type of things would bring interesting insights in your research. Okay, and then the other one is your paper should be in scope of the journal. So make sure that, you know, when you are submitting your paper, you have read the author guidelines and that the journal is publishing relevant papers or papers like that. Title is very important. It's all about marketing, you know, how people remember your paper. Do you guys know what is this? Anybody? If anybody knows this or no? It's Cronbach Alpha. Now, Cronbach Alpha is very important, right? So we read about all of us use Cronbach Alpha in our research and this and that. One paper that I really remember, and it's a very interesting paper, was people who criticized Kronberg alpha, and they said Kronberg alpha, we have used it, but it's not good, and blah. This is a very interesting paper. So this is the title of the paper. Thanks, coefficient alpha. We'll take it from here. Now, what happens is with something like this is that you attract people to read the paper. Now, you know, Kronberg alpha has two distinct groups. So people who love to use Kronberg alpha, statisticians, and people who don't like it. And let's say if your title was like Kronberg alpha is bad, we shouldn't use it, or a criticism on Kronberg alpha or something like that. What would happen is you would attract one group of people that don't like Kronberg alpha, but people who like Kronberg alpha, you would just irritate them. A title like this actually brings both the groups, because it shows that you still acknowledge Kronberg alpha and its contribution, but you want to offer something new now. And then there were a couple of other researchers who provided a rebuttal for this particular paper, and their paper was this: thanks, coefficient alpha, we still need you. So this is another paper, very interesting one, that came out after the previous paper, just to answer some criticism on Kronberg alpha. So again, if you look at the titles, very catchy, and people like to read papers like this. One best way of writing abstract is, this is one of the best abstracts that I've read recently. And this is about how can you analyze qualitative data in 7 different ways. Obviously, because the time is limited, so I have to move forward, but I can send you the slides and you can read this abstract in the future whenever you have time. There are a lot of common mistakes. Remember, these mistakes won't lead rejection of the paper, but if you do multiple of these mistakes, then possibly you can get a rejection. One of them is formatting issues. So if your paper have formatting issues, you did not do the proper formatting of your paper, that is a problem. Don't do that. Then we have sending it to the wrong editor or journal. That's still okay, but it just creates a negative impression. What happens is sometimes you send your paper to a journal with a cover letter, and then your paper gets rejected. Then you submit it to another journal without changing name of the editor or name of the journal on the cover letter. So that happens, not a big deal, but it just creates a negative impression. Grammatical and spelling errors is another one. Sometimes the references are missing. Sometimes there are too many references, like maybe 150 to 200 references in a paper. Sometimes there are too few references, like 10 or 15 references. So that's again a minor mistake. Missing references is one. Revealing identity of authors is another one. These days is getting a big thing, so maybe your paper can get rejected for it. Or sometimes if the reviewers understand who the authors are, they would, refuse to review the paper. If your tables and figures are missing, this also happens again if you're converting your thesis into a paper. So sometimes in your thesis there are 25, 30 tables or figures, and sometimes your text says that as shown in table 21, but there is no table 21, so something like that. Your abstract is missing. This happens to certain journals that require a particular type of abstract. So if that's missing, another minor mistake. Multiple writing styles, again, it's not a major one, but a minor one. Normally, if this happens, the editor or reviewers would ask you to copy edit your paper, or get it really okay. All right. Okay, there are certain reasons why your paper can get rejected. One of them is if your paper is not well positioned for the journal. If, let's say, the journal is related to marketing and you send it an HR related paper to the journal, that's a big problem. Paper would be rejected if you are not clear about the contribution of the paper. Now, this can happen because of two reasons. One is if really there is no contribution in your paper. That's a main reason, but sometimes you cannot communicate your contribution. Sometimes it looks that your paper is having some sort of contribution, but you just haven't contributed or communicated that contribution. Here, what's important is to listen to the reviewers and editors. So if you are getting a revision from the editor saying that to revise your paper, you should be happy that it's not rejected and you have an opportunity to fix your paper and submit it again. So make sure you are reading the reviewer comments clearly and then, changing the stuff in your paper accordingly so that, your paper is not rejected. If you do not answer the so what question, very important, many people ignore this. I've seen many people doing amazing stuff in their analysis, but when it comes to discussion, then it's just very basic and half page or 1 page and then it's done. So if you are doing a lot of stuff, make sure that you are spending time on your conclusion and discussion section where you should answer the so what question, like what is it about your research that is important. Again, there are some examples of the reviews that I've done, and many of them says things like this. See, similar to introduction where there's lack of justification and rationale, conclusion section is missing on the contributions of the study. And then I do not see any theoretical contribution in the study. This is a replication study with limited information on why this replication is needed. Blah, 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 based on a very limited focus on why this context is so important. So what question becomes very important. Then sometimes what happens is when you start a paper, you're very pumped up and then you really want to do a lot of stuff. By the time you collect data, analyze the data, and you get to the conclusion, you don't have a lot of energy to write a good conclusion. So people just write whatever and then they submit it without reading the introduction first. So what happens is in introduction, people have a couple of objectives. In conclusion, they don't answer the questions that were asked in the introduction. So it becomes something like this. So you start your introduction pretty good, you reach to the conclusion, and it just is not good enough, or it just doesn't relate to what you have asked in the introduction. So that's another big reason for rejection. Outdated literature review, I already talked about this. What it simply shows is that you are unaware of the recent discussion in the literature about the topic that you are working on. So make sure your literature is not outdated. Inconsistency. I said earlier, if your section, now this is not about writing style. It's simply about if you are saying in introduction one thing, in literature you are saying completely different thing, and then your methodology doesn't adhere to what is asked in the introduction, then this means that your sections are not connecting well with each other. It's not, it's like you go to an eye doctor and then you ask that eye doctor that my stomach is painful. It just doesn't match. It doesn't work. Another reason for rejection is major methodological problems, which means that if so another, SCM, I use SCM, many people use SCM, but many people only use SCM. They think that SCM is an answer to everything, which is not, right? So make sure that you understand your methodology and you avoid the major methodological problems. On my Facebook, I have done a talk recently about major and minor mistakes in research, which includes these methodological problems in detail. So you can look into that. Replication of a previous study, again, this is something that is a polarizing topic. Some editors, they want you to do replication studies, but then you have to compare it. So if you are replicating a study from another country to another context, make sure you are also explaining what is the difference between these two contexts and why your study is needed, right? But sometimes you can also do a study in a different time. Like I have my mentor and a good friend, Dr. Jihan. He did a study 10 years ago about the technology in hotels. So at that time, what were the technologies in hotels? What did people think about them? And he is replicating that study now 10 years later, which obviously hotels have changed, technologies have changed. So even though it's a replication study, but it shows what has changed in the last 10 years, which brings more implications. So if you are doing a replication, make sure that you are doing that comparison to provide some insights. And then we have, again, this is an example of a review that I did. Very important, this is a replication study with limited information on why the replication is needed, so you need to provide that justification. Plagiarism is a big reason why your paper will be rejected. I guess I don't know if my friend Stan is here. All right, let me see. Okay, I guess he left. But Stan is editor of European Journal of Tourism Research. He has zero tolerance for plagiarism. So if a paper has plagiarism, he blacklists the authors directly. So make sure that there's no plagiarism in your paper if you're not telling an interesting story. So make sure these days it's all about marketing. Your paper should be related or linked to a story, which means that, like I said earlier, read the articles, read magazines, read industry shows, go to industry exhibitions and things like this, from where you can get a good story. Relate your paper to a story. I can actually give you a good example right now. Can you see my all right.
Yes, sir.
Can you see my desktop?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, let me show you something very quickly. All right. So this is a paper we are doing on service failure and how people cope with service failure, right? And if you see, the introduction is, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a guy in US, a musician whose guitar was broken by one airline. So the airline staff was throwing the baggage here and there, and they broke the guitar. And then this guy wanted them to replace or pay for the broken guitar. And the company didn't do that. The guitar originally was $3,500, but in the company didn't do it. So this guy made a video and he uploaded it to YouTube. The video got over 20 million views and it got viral. And because of the PR blunder, United Airlines stock price got down with a 10% devaluation, which costed the airline $180 million. Just because they didn't deal with $3,500. So again, this introduction starts with this story and then goes into the rest of the paper. So remember that this is all about marketing, and when you are doing writing a paper, this marketing stuff is extremely important. Like, how do you bring in people into your study, or how do you hook them into your study? Do you know this Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Anyone?
Sure, sir. I've seen many times.
You know, it has changed recently.
Okay. How, sir?
It become like this.
Correct.
Right? And if you think about it, all of us are pretty much like this. We need Wi-Fi, we need battery, phones are becoming important. So if, let's say, I have to do something about mobile phone usage or people's dependence on Wi-Fi, I can actually create a story like this in my paper to, hook in people, to make them interested in your paper. Because if you are just writing a, very boring paper, nobody is interested in reading it. And that's why maybe all of you must have listened to this, and it's a joke, but people say that if you can't sleep in the night, just start reading a research paper and you would fall asleep. So those type of things are not good. Just telling an interesting story is important. Then, like I said earlier, if you get a revision from an editor, you should understand that it's good for you. So deal with those comments in a proper way, so that you have a good chance of getting accepted. If you don't respond to reviewer comments, it's a big reason for rejection of the paper. Remember that when you are positioning your paper, there are 4 situations based on the problem and based on the solution. Sometimes you have a new problem and you have a new solution for it. We call it breakthrough research. So right now, this COVID-19 coronavirus is a new problem. In the whole world, people are trying to find vaccine for it, which would be a new solution. So as soon as somebody come up with a solution for COVID-19, that would be called as breakthrough research. Now, this doesn't happen all the time. It happens once in a while, and people who get it done are called they call it a lifetime experience. So this is one way of looking at research. The other one is you have a new problem and you come up with an old solution for it. For example, you would see that these days, many people are struggling with conservation of environment, right? So we have, it's hot everywhere and people are using air conditioners and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Now, because you are in Pakistan, maybe most of you have seen room coolers, right? The old room coolers where it's a fan and then, those of you who are from India may also know this room cooler concept, but those of you who are not from Pakistan or India, maybe you know this, but let me explain how this works. So there's a box, this box is filled up with water and the water is pumped throughout this box. So the water is falling on all sides of this box. One side of the box has a fan. So you turn on the fan and this fan throws air at you, but it takes the coolness of the water from that box and throws out cool air. It's a very cheap alternative to air conditioning, and it also helps save the energy or save the environment. So obviously these are old solution to new problems, right? So you need to cool a bigger place and stuff like this. Now many people are doing different type of things. In medicine it happens a lot. So whenever there's a new type of disease, people look at old types of solution for it, or old types of older medicines for it or stuff like that. So this is another case for research. The third one is where you have an old problem and you come up with new solution. Now, one of the oldest problems is customer satisfaction. So since there's business in the world, like thousands of years ago, the service provider or the business owners want to satisfy their customers. It's an old problem, right? All the time people want to satisfy their customers. But with the time, people are coming with new solutions to satisfy their customers. So think about it. If you were traveling 1,000 years ago, people were traveling. At that time, hotels were not luxury hotels. But at that time, people's needs were different, right? So there should be security. There should be, there should be a place to stay out of your home. At that time, that was good enough for satisfaction. That was the solution. Now, you need to have a Wi-Fi, you need to have electricity, you need to have clean bed sheets and things like this. So these are new solutions to old problem. Most of us, when we do research, we are focusing on this one, where the problem is old and we come up with an old solution, right? And this is why many people are not interested in your papers and your papers get rejected, because the editors or the reviewers ask you, so what? What's new, right? Because you are talking about an old problem and you're also talking about an old solution to that problem. So what's new in this research? I think what we can do is we can start with case 4. We should look at an old problem and an old solution and see where can we contribute. Can we make this old problem into a new problem, or can we make this old solution into a new solution? Very, very important, right? So that's where we can start. Most of us end up with one of this number 2 or number 3, where either the problem becomes new with an old solution, or either the problem is old with a new solution, and there is some sort of contribution there, right? So just focus on something like this. I think that most of us, if we want to publish in SSCI papers, we need to make our mark. And how can we do that? We need to think about contribution. The most important contribution is theoretical or conceptual contribution. If you are coming up with a new type of theory, extending the theory, contributing, or merging 2 theories together, or you're creating a conceptual model, that's number 1. That's the most weighted contribution. Number 2 is methodological contribution. If you are doing something with new methods, or if you are criticizing a method, or if you are coming up with a new method, those type of things. If you are creating a new scale, that type of stuff is methodological contribution. The last one is contextual, and contextual is important because in contextual contribution, you do comparisons. Now again, if you are just doing a study in a new context, that's not good enough. Like I said earlier, you have to do comparisons or provide a rationale on why you are doing this research in this context. That's very, very important. So these are the 3 levels of contribution. Now remember that if when you are writing your paper, normally we start with introduction, right? But I would also recommend that once you finish your paper, like up until conclusion, go back to your introduction and recraft it, because you may have seen something new in your conclusion that you want to focus on in your introduction, so that when people read your paper, they read the introduction first, right? That's where they are hooked in. they understand what your research is about. Remember that if you are playing safe, right? Many of us want to play safe. We say that if you write anything in your paper, you should put a reference for it. If you do that, people are going to question the novelty of your study. Because if you are saying that everything has a support, people would say, okay, if everything has support, then what are you doing? And if you are playing novel, means if you are just going with everything new, then people are going to question everything. And this is very common. People are not happy with everything, you know. So make sure that when you are doing your research, there should be multiple unique items. Don't only focus on one contribution. Make multiple contributions. Maybe do some theoretical contribution in a new context, or maybe do some theoretical contribution by developing a new skill or something like this. And then that way you are in safe waters. In the end, I would say that publishing in SSCI papers or impact factor journals, it's a skill. Okay, there's no shortcut to it. Obviously, you need to work hard, be patient and consistent, and never give up. I'm available on all types of social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, email, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. You can reach out to me anytime you want. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, as far as you give me enough time to answer back. And with that, I'll stop here. I'll take a few questions because the time is limited, and then we can finish the session.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for the session. I will ask anybody, if anybody want to ask question, please. Everybody is allowed to ask question.
Shoaib, I want to ask a question.
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Faizan.
Walaikum assalam. Shoaib, whoever is the moderator, if they can enable the chat, that way people can put their questions in the chat if that's easier.
Zafar bhai, please can you enable the chat?
Okay.
Kaser, can you please come again?
Shoaib, chat is enabled.
So chat enabled, sir.
So whoever wants to, put their questions in the chat, they can do it. But if you want to ask your questions just like this, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Dr. Faizan, I am Mushtaq Malik from Kash University, Islamabad.
Ji, sir.
Doing PhD. Thank you very much for giving us a very comprehensive review of the subject.
Thank you.
Sir, my question is not related to journal publication, but related to contribution for PhD thesis. In your opinion, sir, what would be considered substantial contribution for PhD thesis?
Okay, it's a very good question, Mushtaq bhai. I know you follow me on social media as well, and I always enjoy your comments and everything. For PhD, it actually is very difficult for me to answer, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Because in some countries, your PhD is entirely based on your committee or on your supervisors. In other countries, it depends on the examiner. What do they think of contribution? Like I said on the, I guess, second last or third last slide, contribution can be done on 3 different levels: theoretical, methodological, and contextual. The most important one in PhD particularly, is theoretical contribution, because PhD is supposed to prove that you are an independent researcher, but more than that, it's to prove that you are expanding the boundary of knowledge, which actually is a cliche. Many people say that, but I think that it's the most important one, because that's how the mindset works, right? So theoretical contribution is the most important one. How can we say substantial contribution? Again, there are different viewpoints. So some people think that if you add one variable in an existing study or existing theory, then it's a theoretical contribution. That's not the case. Look, theory means that how do you explain a phenomena? So we have a theory called theory of planned behavior that explains how people behave in a certain way, but it should be planned, right? Now, if you add one variable to that, that doesn't make a theoretical contribution. What needs to be done is you need to justify that addition of variable. Is there something wrong with theory of planned behavior in the current environment where it cannot explain the phenomena? If there's something wrong, how addition of that variable would make it right? You need to provide this explanation in order for you to say it's a theoretical contribution. Just by adding one variable, it doesn't make a theoretical contribution. So you should focus on theoretical contribution. There are multiple papers written by some very good scholars that explain what do you mean by theoretical contribution, what makes it a theoretical contribution. I think Dr. Sajid Bashir recently did a workshop where he shared some of those papers. If you go to Google Scholar and just write what is theoretical contribution, you would see the top 3 or 4 papers. Just focus on them because they explain very well what is a theoretical contribution. For PhD, that's number 1. Now, what's important is that because there's so many people are studying for PhD, if you thought of something, maybe it's possible that somebody else also thought about it. So how do you make sure that what you do is unique? For that, it's important that with theoretical contribution, you should do one more type of contribution, either a methodological contribution, either a contextual contribution. You can do a theoretical contribution in a new context, which would make it a theoretical contribution with a contextual contribution. Or you should do a theoretical contribution using some new methods, which would make it basically a theoretical contribution with a methodological contribution. So that would be my take on your question.
Thank you very much, sir. Very kind.
Sure.
Kaisar Shafi, can you please ask again? Kaisar Shafi.
Sir, yeah, I have a question. Can I ask right now?
Yes, please.
First of all, I would like to say thanks to Dr. Faizan. It was a very wonderful session and it was very informative too. Just one question. Let's suppose if I found out some journal and I wrote the paper as per the scope of that particular journal, but sometimes it happens, for example, I submitted that paper and for, let's suppose, 8 months, 10 months, 1 year, I didn't get any response from that particular journal. Should I go for the withdrawal option or should I wait for that particular response? Because research is updating day by day, and if I let's suppose 1 year has been passed, then definitely latest trends or variables are being also introduced. So just a quick comment, should we go for withdrawal option and pursue some other journal, or should we just wait for the editor's response?
Okay, so very good question. I think unfortunately it happens to a lot of us. We submit a paper and then it's just there for a long time. However, one reason for this is, like I said, it's difficult to get reviewers. Sometimes your papers are so technical or so specific to one field that it's just difficult to get people to review it. It happened to me a few times. I face it because I need to select reviewers for the paper submitted to IJHM. What I would suggest is, before you withdraw the paper, give a chance to the editor to explain. So send an email to the editor asking that I've submitted this paper, it's already a few months, can you please tell me what's going on? And normally they will reply back. And again, this is why it's important to select the right journal for your paper, because if you are finding a journal that is good, like with a good standing, it's been published for a long time, and you know the people, because when you do your literature, you read the name of the authors and everything. So if you see a lot of those people on the editorial board or editor's name, then you would know that this is a very good journal with a good standing. Normally, you should select good journals, right? So with good journals, you won't have these type of problems. But even if you have, and you send an email to the editor, normally you would get an email the same day or the next day or within a couple of days, where the editor would explain to you what's going on with your paper. To me, it happened recently where my paper was under review for 8 months, and the editor sent me a picture without showing me name of the reviewers, that paper was sent to 21 reviewers, but only one person accepted and all the other people didn't accept the paper to review. It's all voluntarily done, right? So we should give that opportunity to the editor to explain themselves before you withdraw the paper. Now, if you send an email to the editor and there's no response, then you are free to withdraw your paper.
Thank you.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Hello, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yes. One last question because we are running out of time.
Hello.
Sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes.
Ji,
Go ahead.
ji.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Rahman. Can you hear me? Hello.
Ji. Ask your question.
Okay. Hello, sir. I'm Fujir Rahman from Bangladesh, and I'm following you in your Facebook and other social media. And I learned lots of things in last 1 month from your different sessions. So I have only 2 questions. I just ask you. First one related to as a researcher, as a new or freshers. We are working in different fields like consumer behavior. I'm a faculty member in university, and I work in different types of field like consumer behavior, service marketing, brand, or lots of things. So there is a little bit confusion that you just work in hospitality management, as far as I know. So is it mandatory to work in a specific field as a beginner, or we work in different fields? This is my first question. And another short question, that is, can you suggest some article or any research materials for research contribution for better clarification? Can you suggest some any research materials for that particular contribution? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mahfouz. I'm grateful that you joined this particular session. For your first question, in my opinion, yes, you should have a specialization. You should work in a particular industry, or you should work into a particular area. Because if you don't do that, it's very difficult for you to build your name. Make sure that you have this specialization. Right now, for me, many people approach me to talk to them because they know what's my area. My area is hospitality and tourism, so I talk about hospitality and tourism, but I also talk about methodology. So I talk about PLS and stuff like this. That's because that's my specialization. If I work on everything around me, then it's very difficult to create a specialization for myself. Right? So that's your first question. Second one, like I said, simply go to Google Scholar and write types of contribution. It would give you a lot of ideas. But I'll share one paper with you that I really like a lot. This paper is by Summers. It explains guidelines for conducting research and publishing. In this paper, they say what is the contribution and what type of contributions can you make, right? So yeah, here. So what is a conceptual contribution or an empirical contribution? Like I said earlier, if you have improved conceptual definitions of original constructs, blah, 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 just look at this paper. There are many more papers as well that can explain what is contribution. It's a simple Google Scholar search. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right, sure. We can take one more question and then we can finish because I have to run for my class at 10 o'clock.
Sure. Anyone else, Jim?
Hello.
Jay.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Neha Mishra. I am from India, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. First of all, thank you for such a comprehensive and enriched session. So basically, I had my master in sociology, where we have been mostly trained in qualitative research. So when I'm pursuing research in tourism, the problem that I'm facing, that most of the journals have certain biases towards quantitative research. So apart from few of the journals that are basically sociology in their own domain, so how to how to deal with certain things, if I want to do qualitative research, which journal should I target upon, or should I bring a mixed method approach? Because I'm new to the research field, that's why.
Okay, Neha, thank you for joining from India. I hope you're well. Okay, so the thing is this: you're right that it's a perception that some journals are biased towards quantitative methods or whatever. That's not the truth. I'll tell you why we have this perception. Because look, journals are going to publish what they are supposed to publish based on what people are submitting. So if, let's say, I'm editor of a journal, I get 1,200 papers a year. Out of 1,200 papers, if let's say 1,000 papers are quantitative, obviously I have to publish more quantitative papers because there are more quantitative submissions, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is that comparatively, quantitative researchers make their papers much more robust in terms of findings and methodology compared to qualitative researchers. So I see that the quantitative researchers are more developed because they're doing much more stuff in their paper to draw conclusions. Many qualitative researchers, what they do is they interview 10 people, 15 people, and then they do a simple frequency analysis or thematic analysis. And then, so if you are a qualitative researcher, I think the first thing you need to do is develop your paper into something that is valuable for people to read. That's one. Second is submit it to and then go to some review papers. So I just did a review paper about methodology in hospitality and tourism research from 1990 till 2016. So it's a lot of papers that we reviewed. And you are right that around 68% papers are quantitative, the rest are qualitative. So if you are a qualitative researcher, one, develop your work. Second, understand which journals are publishing more of qualitative research. I'll give you the names now. Annals of Tourism Research is pretty good with qualitative research. Any journals from Europe or Britain are very good with qualitative research, like Scandinavian Journal of Hospitality and Tourism is pretty big on qualitative research. But then also mainstream journals like IJHM or IJCHM, which are not tourism but hospitality journals, mainly publish quantitative, but they also publish qualitative papers. So unfortunately, there's a bias. Unfortunately, there's a conception. There's no bias, there's a conception. But understand that more people who submit are quantitative. That's why you see more quantitative papers.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Okay, sure, no problem at all. All right, guys, I think we need to finish because I have 5 minutes before my class.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I'd like to request Dr. Khurram Shehzad, Dean Faculty of Management Sciences, to formally thank the participants and our distinguished speaker. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Faizan. Listening to you was indeed a very rich learning experience. And I hope, like me, all other participants have certainly learned a lot and benefited from your presence with us. I really appreciate and thank you on the behalf of all the participants for sparing your valuable time. Thank you so
very
much. And Jazakallah.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.